What's going on, guys? I've kind of got, my fly reels about ready to de-rig for the weekend. Just got finished fishing Straight Fork. We were up there for a couple hours. Give y'all an idea of what we were using. So yeah, let me just go ahead and get to it. So I normally carry around both rods with me. It is a super pain because they get tangled up together. You just got to get in and out of spots with two rods versus one. And that almost does give you double, double the effort, I guess you could say. So normally, I'm fishing with a dry drop setup. And what I mean by dry drop is it's very easy. So essentially what you've got here is you've got a dry fly, which kind of serves two purposes. So you've got the dry fly. That's your dry fly. That's a little elk hair caddis, yellow on the bottom. Really pretty and just super delightful, I would imagine, for a fish. Even though I don't get any bites on it, I thought I would. But regardless, they weren't really biting on top of the surface that I could tell. So they weren't biting on top of the surface like I could tell. But really what dry dropping means is you've got a dry fly on top, which I just showed you is the caddis, elk hair caddis. And the way I make it dry is I've got some liquid. You can put that liquid on here and it will make it float. It will make it completely buoyant, and it will sit on top of the water, and it acts, like I said, number one, as bait, and they will bite this because it's got a hook, and you can set the hook on that. Or number two, it acts as an indicator. So what I mean by that is on this one, you've got the indicator line. So the indicator line is different than an indicator. The indicator line tells you how far down deep for a Euro nipping setup, not this rod. This rod, right? This is a Euro nipping rod with the Euro nipping line that tells you how far deep down in the water column you are, right? This right here serves as an indicator to display to you, the fisherman, where your bait is, and then also where this bait is in comparison. Now, this bait isn't ever going to be completely perpendicular to this one. It's always going to hang back a couple of feet as it's moving through the water column, right? So while this sits on top of the surface because you've got that dry drop fluid or whatever, the fluid that you can drop on there and make it buoyant, right? This sits back behind it a little bit and it's just going to float underneath, and the fish can also bite this as well. The reason I kind of use dry dropping setup is because it gives the fish two options. You can also see, number one, are the fish biting on top of the surface or are the fish biting below the surface. 80% of fish feed below the surface, and 80% of the food that they get, that's rather what I mean. 80% of the food that trout eat are below the surface. So 80% of the time, they're going to bite this. Some of the time, they might bite this more because they're feeding on top of the surface. And in order to find that, you need to find the right size, the pattern, color, that kind of thing to figure out what to use. I typically just throw something on that I know, okay, that looks good. It's got some yellow in there. It's pretty big. I can kind of see it on top of the water if it's really far out there. Or number two, you can get them on the dropper. This is the dry, this is the dropper, dry dropper, right? The droppers is that midge that I just told you about, right? So this midge right here actually got the biggest fish on today in Deep Creek. Today the biggest fish, but anyway, that is the dry drop setup. And the way you cast it is a little bit different than a Euro nipping rod. You're not really looking to like cast and bring the rod tip up. What you're wanting to do is cast to a specific spot, kind of feed the line a little bit, mend the line, which means like, okay, get a better position on the fly so that way it floats down naturally and the fish kind of know, okay, that's something I can eat. As soon as you start tugging on it and stuff, the fish just completely get uninterested. So these setups are a little bit more difficult, I would, in my mind, they're more difficult. But then I've also, people have said, how do you Euro nymph? Because that seems super hard. But for me, I mean, it all just depends on what you want to do, and kind of there is some skill level with both of them that are involved. But just like with anything, I think it's important just to get out there and try to find the right setup for you. With this Euro rod, I've had probably 5 or 6 different setups in terms of how long do I like the leader, how long do I like to tip it, how much indicator line do I want. So there's certain situations where you definitely need to like kind of just practice with and see what kind of works for you. But those are the setups that I use, and I think they've worked really well for me. And you know, maybe in a later video I can go a little bit more into like literally how much feet do I use. And if you have any questions, please just let me know. I'm happy to help. You know, no need to struggle out there. It is a really tough sport, but at the end of the day, you know, we're out there to catch fish. And as hard as that is to do, the most important thing is to have fun and just make sure you get out there and try to catch fish. It's going to take a little bit, so do not get discouraged. So anyway, that is a dry drop setup. It serves 2 purposes. It's bait and it's an indicator, so you kind of know where the drift is happening. Is it going too fast? Do I need to mend the line? Do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? Doesn't matter. But anyway, that's the setup that I use for the 5 weight, because it just gives the fish 2 options versus 1 with the Euro nymphing rod. The Euro nymphing rod, you've got to basically get it right with whatever bait you're currently using. You only get 1 shot at it. So it's super important with the Euro nymph to make sure you know what they're biting on. There are times where I do have to switch bait out and stuff like that. But anyway, thought I'd kind of get into a little bit of the rod setup. Let me show you a little bit more up here is the baits that I use.